This is a continuation of the series on threat indicators using the Guelph letter bomber as an example. So let's talk about court orders or respect for authority. Some people think that offenses against the administration of justice, so like fail to appear, breach of bail, that sort of thing, some people think, well, it's not really a big deal. I maintain that it is a big deal. And here's why. If you won't listen to a court order, if that offender won't listen to a court order, how is the court going to protect a victim? The court can make an order, stay away. Well, if he doesn't respect court orders, he's going to do what he wants anyway. He's not going to stay away. So that is something that has to be taken into account when you look at management or when you look at release conditions. If he's not going to listen, there's no point. In the case of the Guelph letter bomber, he was put under conditions by the court not to have any contact with the people he was criminally harassing. And back to the reason why he was criminally harassing them, he felt like they were not doing a good enough job for him. He wanted to be a model and an actor, and the people he was harassing were from talent agencies, and he felt like, well, you're not doing good enough job for me. So again, self-entitlement, self-righteous, it's your fault, couldn't possibly be because anything to do with him, right? So he harassed, and finally, he was charged. He was able to get out of it. He got a conditional, which means if he abides by court orders, he doesn't get a conviction. And even there, and I'll bring this up in another video, but even there, he perceived that as not good enough because, he's entitled to everything and everybody should see things my way. The court ordered him to stay away from these people, have no contact with them. So what does he do? He's not going to blatantly go and have contact with them. He's more, he plans better than that. So what he does is he waits a while, and he starts sending harassing, threatening letters anonymously. So he is going to continue on the course of conduct without changing, but find a way around the court order. So some people do that like an outright breach. And some people will just find a way to skirt around it and say, well, technically I wasn't, but the essence of the thing is the same. This guy in particular didn't care about court orders. So that is a huge red flag. In addition to working around the court's orders, he dared to actually send tainted water to the judge. The judge gave him a gift, but he sees it as being wronged anyway, and that we'll look at in a little bit more detail in another video, a sense of, I call it taking the victim stance, but he even dared to go after the judge. So if the judge isn't safe and his lawyer isn't safe, well, the public isn't safe either. Have a look at this. Employees at a CIBC bank in Toronto also received the same gift. One of the employees drank some of the water and became ill. The CIBC? Well, at one time they froze his bank accounts. He held a grudge, and that's another indicator, and took that kind of revenge, and revenge-oriented thinking is another indicator, for something so minor. You ever hear about, a guy in a bar who gets in a big fight because that guy looked at me the wrong way? Or, she did this little thing, and it's some little offense, some slight or even a perceived slight. So you don't even have to offend certain people. You don't even have to do anything. They just have to perceive that you did, and they then lash out. Samuel Yolkelson wrote a book with Stanton Samanow, The Criminal Personality. There's 3 volumes. Volume 1 and 2 are the best. They're old, but it's a good foundation, because a lot of people look at criminals and they try to put themselves in their shoes and think, well, why would this person do that? I mean, they can't wrap their head around why they would commit a certain crime or react in a certain way. But what people need to understand is that career criminals aren't wired the same. So they're not necessarily thinking the same as you. So you can't, it doesn't work to put your brain sort of in their situation, because you wouldn't react like that. You wouldn't lash out at somebody over something dumb. Yolkelson and Samanow talk about something called zero state. And that's where the person feels like either they're great and they're all that, and if they're not great and all that, then they're zero, they're nothing. There's nothing in between. And they can't handle that zero state. So that look or that laugh, laughing at somebody can bring that up. It is absolutely devastating to them, and they can't handle it. So that's something to keep in mind. If you see somebody who gets really upset over something dumb, or has to lash out at a perceived slight or a small offense, then that person might be dealing with like a zero state thing, and that's a big red flag. So the bomber's mad about having his accounts locked, and not only is he mad and takes such offense at it that he's going to actually take action to get revenge on people who are just doing their jobs. He doesn't do it right away. He hangs on to that for years. And that's one of the things we look at is does this person hold grudges? Is there someone that you know who constantly talks about something that happened 20 years ago and they're still mad about it, and I'm gonna get that person one day? That's a concern by itself. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh my gosh, they're gonna go out and bomb somebody or hurt somebody. Again, it's that combination of things. All the tumblers have to be in place, but it is a red flag. If somebody ruminates about a perceived slight or a slight, if somebody hangs on to something for years and years, that's cause for a bit of concern and to take a closer look at everything else. And this thing with the CIBC employees, again, this speaks to a sense of entitlement. The bank doesn't just lock your account for no reason. A lot of people have had their account locked, or they couldn't get a loan, or they got overcharged on something. A lot of people have had issues with a bank or a store or whatever else. They don't hang on to it for years and years and then feel like they should take revenge. And they also don't feel like they're so slighted and so offended that that they're going to hang on to it. Like, this is such a sense of entitlement that you shouldn't, hey, bank teller, like you shouldn't do your job, or everybody else has to abide by the rules, but I don't. So there's like this sense of entitlement and a sense of being better than everybody else. And again, that sense of entitlement leads to justification. And once the person has justified it in their mind, that's permission to go ahead. The other thing that this shows is an absolute lack of empathy. As it turns out, he didn't put ricin in the water. It was another kind of poison. I'm going to just show you this clip about this poison.
He laced the water bottles with a substance called dimethyl sulfoxide, which is an industrial solvent. This substance alone would be unlikely to kill anyone, but would make the body better absorb ricin or other poisons.
So that poison would cause the body to better absorb ricin. And he was researching ricin. And I kind of think like this was a test run. We see that with offenders who are planning something big. They'll do little test runs to see if they can get away with it, to see if they can get in somewhere, to see if somebody will notice their presence or that something is amiss. He experimented on these human beings, right? He put the poison in the water and had no concern whatsoever that they might get really sick, that they might be harmed, that they might suffer. In fact, he wanted them to suffer. So lack of empathy and sadism don't necessarily show up in such an obvious manner. It can show up in little things. One of the other things to watch out for, and that I'm not saying it happened in this case, I'm just thinking of it. I didn't write a script today. Is that somebody who's cruel to animals. Watch for lack of empathy. That's a big one. Okay, that's it for today. I'll do some more next week. Thanks for watching.